What's going on, everybody? Moonshine here. Figured I'd talk to you a little bit about my background in wrestling. Seeing as if I'm going to comment on wrestling, I might as well give you some sort of reason why I'm talking about it and what qualifies me. Well, what qualifies me is nothing any more than anyone else. I've got an opinion and I watch it and enjoy it. But regardless, when I was a little kid, my parents had a satellite dish growing up, so I was very fortunate. I got all the different NWA, AWA, of course, being from upstate New York, a lot of WWF. We lived right outside the Poughkeepsie area, so you're close to the Mid Hudson Civic Center. Probably my first memory of wrestling was WWF television, and was probably watching something with Sergeant Slaughter or something or other. But really, the thing that really got me into wrestling was these guys. I was watching NWA as a little kid, and seeing the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal coming out, and you got Iron Man playing, and the whole friggin' the look and the gimmick, and just destroying two hapless souls. It was wonderful. It was fantastic, and I was like, oh, holy crap! I want to do that when I grow up. So anyhow, you fast forward a little bit through life, and continue to watch wrestling probably up until the seventh or eighth grade, where it wasn't quite so cool anymore. Uh, so I stopped watching for a real long time, but loved it growing up. Loved the NWA, AWA. Later AWA, I didn't really get into it until the '80s. I think at that time Rick Martel was the champion. But anyhow, I'm kind of babbling a little bit. Uh, Love the Ultimate Warrior, the Road Warriors, Demolition. Macho Man, Ricky Steamboat, the British Bulldogs. The British Bulldogs, probably next to the Road Warriors, are my favorite tag team growing up. Ricky Steamboat's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I really wasn't a big Hulk Hogan guy. I actually always enjoyed watching people beat up on him, especially the Heenan family and everything. Paul Orndorff, he's another one I really enjoyed growing up and gotten to appreciate a lot more as I've gotten older. Uh, then, like I say, I got out of it a little bit. Got back into it when I was probably like a lot of people, the Attitude Era. Started getting into it then. When I was in college, I'd say I started watching a local access show, and at the time, not many people knew what it was, but it turned out to be ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. So just watching that and the fan interaction and the way that it was set up, it kind of spurred my interest back into it again. Really kind of like rekindled the fire that I had. Because as you get into wrestling a little bit, and people will tell you that you kind of get hit with the bug, and it never really leaves you. So that's kind of like what happened. Is it never really left me, and I continued to. Then I started watching it more and more, and ECW was awesome. I loved it. I used to go to a lot of the shows. Uh, we used to get in Middletown, New York. There was a Orange County Fairgrounds arena, and they have a lot of the stuff there. Some of the earlier stuff I didn't get to see, which kind of sucks because as I progressed on through my journey in wrestling, that was kind of it would have been kind of a little bit more crucial, a little bit more noteworthy in my story had I gone to some of these things. But love the Eliminators, Shane Douglas, a lot of different guys. Sabu, I was a big Sabu guy. When I was in college, I actually did a paper on him, which a lot of people were either appalled or fascinated, depending on your opinion. So then I decided like I say, I was in college. I was really kind of just spinning my wheels, just doing it because that was just something that you did, and didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up, so to say. And I was like, you know what, I want to give this wrestling thing a try. Uh, so I happened to run into a kid at the gym who had a little pamphlet, and it was written by Paul Bear and Jim Cornette, and it was about how to get into wrestling. So he gave it to me. I read it. Said read it a few more times. I did. It had a little directory in the back where you could find all the various schools in the areas all around the country. So I picked a couple. Picked Reached out to Kowalski's, Killer Kowalski School in Massachusetts. Reached out to Exotic Adrian Streets down in Florida. Malenko's down in Florida. I want to say Al Snow's. Al Snow had a gym in Ohio. Reached out to him. And then I also reached out, of course, because Extreme Championship Wrestling had their House of Hardcore, I think it was, and Taz, I believe, was running it at the time, and then eventually Shane Douglas was running it. Reached out to them. Heard back from a few of them. Kowalski's was a little too expensive. Living in the New England area, to me, was a little too expensive, so I didn't go there. Uh, really wasn't really didn't really like the Adrian Street one, so I got in touch with a lady named Phyllis Lee, who used to do a lot of help. She helped out Malenko's school, and she would get out of state people, out of the country people down to Florida to train there. So got in contact with her, uh, talked to her for a couple times, and yeah, and then they told me how much it cost, how long it was going to take. Had to fly down to Florida or move to Florida, relocate. So that's what I did. I got on a plane. I had two bags, a hockey bag, and all my clothes and some music and a couple of odds and ends, and moved to Florida. Trained with Dean. Met him. Actually, the first day that I met Dean, one of the first people that I met was Eddie Guerrero, and I snubbed him because I'm an asshole. So he was so cool, man. He walked up to me. It was like he was actually in the ring training with a bunch of the guys at the time, and he tried to he just saw some stranger come to the school, and he said, "Hey, how can I help you?" And then I was just kind of like looking around and looking for Dean because he was one of the guys I recognized, and I just completely, it didn't even register with me that I was talking Eddie Guerrero. So found Dean, got his attention, talked to him. He gave me the whole rundown of the school and everything involved with it, and yeah, and then I started. Uh, Trained with a gentleman named originally I trained with a gentleman named Jeff Bradley, who originally he wrestled as the original Dudley. He was the original Dudley boy. It was his gimmick. He actually, he's a fascinating dude. If he ever did an interview, a shoot interview, I really wish he did because he's got a ton of stories. And one of the better ones is him talking himself out of a job as a Dudley boy. Uh, but yeah, I started with him. He was he was in charge of the basic classes, and he taught me all the fundamentals. And I worked with him for probably like 2 3 months. But he on top of wrestling, he had a job. He had a full-time job, so he was doing that. And then Dean was on the road with WCW at the time, so he was in and out. He'd pop in and out. He'd work with the advanced students. He'd work with us, the beginners, a little bit when Jeff wasn't there. And then eventually he took some time off from WCW, and I got to work with him pretty much all the time. And there was a point where they were worried that I wasn't going to be able to train anymore because I was having issues with. There's a whole long story that I'm not going to get into because it'll be a whole half hour. But he spent a lot. He like kind of like speed run me through a lot of stuff, and even though it's you might miss a few of the details here and there. Doing a speed run with Dean is like fantastic. He was a phenomenal trainer. He's a brilliant mind for wrestling. Smart guy, funny, very dry sense of humor, which I appreciated because it's kind of along the lines of my humor. And yeah, I mean, he was great. I can't say enough things about Dean. He just he helped me immensely, and going to his school was a treat. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. I wished I could have gone further in the business and made the school a little bit more proud. But these things happen. Not everybody gets to come out of the tunnel, as it were. But yeah, so I trained with him. Did that for probably about roughly from October of '97 to December '98. Then I had my first match in, I want to say, September of '98. And it went about as well as anybody's debut match could have gone. Probably address that at a later time if I continue to do any of these videos. By the way, like, share, and subscribe, all that good shit. But yeah, so that was that, and then I continued on. Moved from Tampa, moved back home. A lot of my roommates who I had at the time, they were moving back home around Christmas time. And actually, the school was shutting down not too long after that because Dean was he was about to have his first kid. He wanted to focus on not only his family but his job. So he couldn't do that and the school. So the school had to go. So they ended up closing shop not too long after that. I want to say like maybe 6 months later. And yeah, and then I did a bunch of road work in the New England area. Did that for about a year. Didn't really hit there. You know, that's a whole other long story that I'm not going to bore people with right now. Moved back to Florida and wrestled there for many, many years. I'll get into that a little more deeply. Uh, but yeah, other than that, that's my background. I mean, lifelong fan, got into it, went to a good school, trained with a good trainer, got to wrestle with a ton of great independent talent, some name talent who, again, I'll get into that another time. If anybody bothers watching these things, then I'll continue to do them and I'll continue to tell my story. Uh, yeah, that's it for now. So if anyone's wondering, well, why the hell is this guy talking about wrestling? What qualifies him? That's that's why I talk about it. That's what I did. That's what I do. That's why I'm gonna do it. So I hope everybody enjoys it. Hope everyone enjoyed this, likes it. If you did, comment, do all the stuff that they all tell you to do. All right, that's it for now. Later.